Welcome back. We're still here with Geoff Magliochetti. Geoff, March Madness certainly lived up to its name this year. My bracket was busted early on because I had St. John's winning the whole thing, believe it or not. A lot of people, especially in this area, had high hopes for St. John's, but they lost to number 10 Arkansas in the second round. Where did it go wrong for the Red Storm? Because as much as you can never predict these brackets, I really thought they would go further.
Yeah, rightfully so. This was a magic year for St. John's, and you want to talk about the Caitlin Clark effect. Talk about the Rick Pitino effect this has had on Queens and beyond. He really did a number on this program, and it's only going to continue. But of course, heartbreak does reign for the time being. I so desperately wanted to put St. John's into the Final Four portions, into the further portions, but at the same time, something scared me in the sense that. I was very worried about betting against John Calipari. Now, I had St. John's beating Arkansas in round two and losing to, I believe, Texas Tech. But, this would have been a tough bracket either way for St. John's because Florida was a top team. I had them as my national champion, and they could well clinch that tonight against Houston. Texas Tech was also dangerous. But what really sunk St. John's against Arkansas? I listened to myself about Calipari in the first round. I had Arkansas beating Kansas. But then I didn't listen to myself the second time around, came back to bite me. So what went wrong for St. John's? I think what really stood out to me about that defeat was that St. John's, their offense kind of disappeared at the end. How many times have we seen NCAA tournament games? How many times have we heard the word gritty? How many times have we heard the words ugly win? How many upsets have we seen that start off as defensive struggles? We go to the under 12 timeout, it's something like 12-8. It's something like, 14-10. And St. John's, needed that offensive push to propel them forward. And unfortunately, they didn't get it. RJ Luis's struggles from the field were well documented. It's really unfortunate that that folks kind of turned on him on social media. I even hesitate to call them St. John's fans. I know they're a lot better than that. I think it's just a prevalent tough scene for sports viewers, let's call them. I'm not gonna single out any group. Carl Anthony Towns gave him some nice encouragement in the aftermath of that. So yeah, but the fact of the matter is, Luis's struggles did not help them. Kadari Richmond spent most of that game in foul trouble. So St. John's is missing two of their stars right from the get go, one of whom could really contribute on the offensive end. And that's what did them in against a very athletic, very lengthy Arkansas team. And that was just a recipe for disaster moving forward. But the fact of the matter is, St. John's is built for long-term success. This kind of paved the path for greater things. Already, Pitino and company are working in the transfer portal. They got Joseph Sanan out of Arizona State. He came in the transfer portal, and Bryce Hopkins, oft injured but very, very, very talented, coming from a conference rival in Providence. Very sorry if I messed up any of those names, by the way. But at the same time, this is a huge step forward for St. John's. They are going to lose. They're going to lose Richmond. They're going to lose Smith, I believe, as well. So this is a really good step forward in the right direction for St. John's. If they are able to use it as a foundational year, in the sense that, this was the first step to bigger and better things, because let's be honest, St. John's is ahead of schedule. Not many teams go from, not winning a tournament game for a quarter century to being a number 2 seed and being a Final Four darling in many March Madness predictions. If this can be used as a foundational year and proves to be the first chapter in a very, 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 very successful story, the heartbreak of losing to Arkansas will disappear over time.
Now, one of the highlights of the game was the matchup of the two coaches. You touched on it before. Two legendary college basketball names, John Calipari and Rick Pitino. And I might add, two Italian coaches who have ties to the area. How special was it to see those two legends face off?
New Jersey Nets legend John Calipari, you say, huh? But no, that's something we don't see much in this day and age, and because coaches and the players, for that matter, they're leaving at record paces at this point with NIL and the transfer portal, and to see those two do battle one last time, if only the game was in Lexington, although that would create a major advantage for Arkansas, I feel. But at the same time, I think that we were in for a treat, and it lived up to its hype because, again, I was so worried on betting against Calipari. I too was kind of sick of the SEC dominance, even though I put I put two SEC teams in my Final Four. One of them I got wrong. I had Tennessee on the other side of the bracket. So oops. But I think that this is a really good step forward in the right direction for both of these programs. Arkansas, again, I looked at their credentials and I was like, really, 10 seed? What are we doing here? But again, do not bet against Calipari in March. And Pitino, what he has done, he has awakened the sleeping giant in Queens, I feel, in the sense that, people are going to want to play here. People want that New York pressure in a sense. And let's face it, certain sports are better when the New York team does well. And I'm saying that as someone who's lived in the tri-state area forever and ever, but I think there's an undeniable feel in that because if I'm a New York Knicks recruiter, for example, I show any potential free agent the downright joyful, for lack of a better term, riots out there. I know it's not a riot. I know they're not destructive. They're just silly out there. They're crazy. I show any free agents that and say this is for winning game 2 in the first round. Imagine what you could do. Imagine what they'll do when you help us win the Eastern Conference Finals, the NBA Finals. And Pitino can do the same thing with St. John's. Can you imagine? We've seen college towns go crazy for Final Four victories, for Elite Eight victories, for upset victories. Can you imagine what Queens could do for a major St. John's victory? Can you imagine what the Garden could do for a major St. John's victory? So if Pitino has awoken a sleeping giant in St. John's, and if he can use this as a foundational year for greater success, again, the sadness over the Arkansas loss won't fully vanish, but can be viewed as a bittersweet, perhaps even silver lining positivity over time.
And Geoff, very quickly, the final game is tonight. New Jersey is a betting state. Hypothetically or realistically, who would you put your money on, Florida or Houston?
I'm not a betting man. This is why, because I had Colorado State in my Sweet 16, and I got 2 of the final. I was done from the first game. Whose bright idea was it to have an 8-9 game as the very first game? I think it was that Louisville game. So that's why I'm not a betting man. But if I was, I'm going to be loyal. I will stick with the champion I had to start in Florida. Talk about Pitino pupils. Walter Clayton Jr. starred at Iona, and he is living up to every bit of the hype for the Gators at this point, putting up fantastic shots. I'm still in awe of what he was able to do in that game against Texas Tech. Drove the lane, saw a couple guys bearing down on him, went back, nailed the 3 right in their faces. So I am in awe of Walter Clayton Jr., and I am going to say the Gators make Billy Donovan, newly minted Hall of Famer and New York Knicks legend Billy Donovan, proud by picking up a win tonight. I think it'll be closer than people anticipate, but I will go with the Gators in that one.
Time will tell. Geoff Magliochetti, thanks so much for the insight, and we will talk soon, my friend. Thanks again.
Mike, appreciate your time and insight. Keep up the great work, sir.